Welcome to RAADcast, where science and soul converge in shaping the future of human potential. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and together we're stepping beyond limits to explore super longevity. Produced by the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, the visionaries behind RAADfest, RAADcast is more than a podcast. It's a movement for the bold, the curious, and those who refuse to settle for anything less than the extraordinary. Together, we'll uncover the cutting-edge science, unknown strategies, and transformative practices, paving the way for a future of limitless potential. If you're ready to think bigger, dream bolder, and live longer, you're in the right place. This is RAADcast. Now let's get ready to explore the future of life itself. Welcome to another episode here of RAADcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and I am absolutely thrilled to sit down with a friend and a true trailblazer in the field of longevity science, Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. She's a leading physician, co-founder of Club Exosome, and a best-selling author of not just one, two, and books 3 and 4 are coming soon. You probably know her work of the Kaufmann Protocol, where she shares her groundbreaking research that has redefined how we approach aging, blending rigorous cellular biology with actionable longevity strategies for a personalized roadmap to living better longer. So get ready, because today we're going to explore her unique approach to longevity, her insights on regenerative health, and her vision for a future where living longer and better is within everyone's reach. Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, so good to have you here, lovely lady. Welcome.
You are so amazing. That was a really impressive preamble. That was beautiful. You're hired. Thanks so much.
Yay. Happy to help. Happy to help. It's all you. I'm just reflecting you back to you, my love. It's so great. It's funny when we get to condense it, right? Because, we were just chatting before the show started that like there's so many things. This you and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other, I think for about 6 or 7 years now. And it's like it's the long game we talk about in this, as longevity is top of mind for everybody now. You were an early adopter, before it's as big of a buzz as it is today. And you've been doing the work on just putting things into practice. And it's fun to see the culmination. And I'm just curious, because you've been in this for a minute and you're just kicking it into a whole other stratosphere. Has your own views on aging and longevity really influenced your work and your research?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, that's an understatement. I mean, when I started this, it was this hypothetical, I wonder if I can unravel cells, right? Can I possibly root through a billion articles that may or may not make sense and come up with some trace of understanding to develop a longevity? That wasn't even a word at the time, right? An anti-aging strategy. I got to tell you, I got called every name in the book, like Don Quixote, you're chasing windmills. This is absurd. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. No one's ever going to read your book. It's ridiculous, right? And it's gone from that to, oh, of course there's a thing called longevity. Well, of course I'm a longevity physician. Like, well, of course you can do X, Y, Z. What about the 17 other things that we want to do? So now it's almost established. And now we're just looking for more of the minutia. So it is just an incredibly quickly evolving science and a different way to approach existence.
Well, I love that. Oh my gosh. And we're going to talk about a different way of approaching existence because, here on RAADcast, it's really about kind of, can we stretch our boundaries? Can we get comfortable in the uncomfortable? Can each of us think bigger? And what does that mean for us as clinicians and experts out kind of leading the charge, as well as the enthusiasts, and making it applicable to us all as individuals and as the collective? And so I love what you're saying and what we're going to explore. And, Sandy, when I think of your work, obviously here in the longevity realm, the hallmarks of aging became a thing in 2013. Now, if we go even back much further, longevity is not a new thing. Anti-aging isn't a new thing. We can think back to Fountain of Youth. Humans have always been looking for a way to say, can we live longer, better? Can we look prettier? Can we have more energy? Can we have more stamina and vitality? Can we all the things? And we just now have a growing field of not just science. I call longevity the new human paradigm, because it's not just about cells, although we're going to talk about cells, It's about literally the ripple effect out to how we human differently. And you, however, took those foundational hallmarks, and I don't know. Let me back up. I'm not going to make an assumption. Did you first start with the hallmarks before you came to your tenets, or did you derive your seven foundational tenets on your own? Let's like answer that first, and then I want to kind of take everybody through those core tenets as we build our bridge into a new future of exponential humaning.
No, sure. So what I did, so my background, once upon a time, I was a cell biologist. Um, which granted it was cell physiology and it was a long time ago, but I started life as a cell physiologist. So when I started accumulating articles on cellular aging, um, I honestly, the article about the hallmarks was one of, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of articles. And I looked at it and I go, huh, that's an interesting list. I don't think it's all that great, but it's a list, right? I mean, I didn't know anyone in the business. I really had no idea. And I wasn't looking at names on papers. I was looking at the papers, right?
Yeah.
What is the real science? What's valid science? What's not valid science? What's repeatable? If an article said one thing, you go, well, that's interesting. If seven of them said it, you go, well, now we're on to something. So
Hmm.
honestly, the hallmarks were just huh, that's interesting. But I really didn't find it very organized or complete.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I did is as I accumulated, and I say this over and over again, and it's absolutely spot on. I would take post-it notes and go, this person had this brilliant idea of, cellular dysfunction in this one thing. And it was a post-it note, right? And I had hundreds of post-it notes around my office. God knows my anesthesia office looked kind of ridiculous. But over time, I would coalesce these piles, right? Oh, all of this seems to be centered around DNA. All of this over here, proteostasis. And as the piles coalesced, they naturally fell into seven piles.
Yeah.
And every now and then there was one thing that you said, well, you could put it here or you could put it there. But based on the logic that I was following, it kind of fell into a place. Like an example of that is autophagy, right? Where do you put autophagy? And I decided that if you consider autophagy as recycling, right?
Hmm.
When do you recycle? You recycle when you're taking out the garbage or things don't work, right? So I put it in the quality control division. So quality control is tenet five in my world. It's when there's things go wrong with your DNA, things go wrong with proteostasis. Therefore, you have to recycle them. So autophagy fell into that category. Could it have gone into a different category? Potentially. But I liked the idea of seven well thought out categories because plus people can remember seven. There's the
Yeah.
seven pillars, there's the seven this, the seven that. We had telephone numbers that were seven digits. People can remember seven things, and it just fell into those piles. Um,
So I want to know about those piles here in a moment for anybody that hasn't engaged with your work yet. Yet, before we go through the seven, have you considered or like have you been tempted to add more tenants? Because obviously we started with the nine hallmarks of aging. Now we have the 12 hallmarks of aging, and rumor has it there's more coming later this year. So is there this have you found as you continue to look at the research, does everything still stack up in those seven buckets? And or have you been kind of like, well, maybe we need to revise it and go to nine? Where are you at with that?
no, so the beautiful thing about the tenets is that they're categories. And what I have done is expanded the subcategories.
Nice. Okay.
Right? And tenants don't, or the hallmarks don't have that capacity, right?
Yeah.
It's very specific minutia in no organized sense. And kudos to the people that work on it. But if you look at it in terms of tenants, for example, I became absolutely obsessed with circadian rhythms,
Yes.
right? And how they change over time and all the various biochemical pathways, blah, 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 blah. And it's something I hadn't thought of originally. Right?
Hmm.
So you say to yourself, well, is that another tenet or does it fit? And I decided that it's a pathway,
Yes.
right? So the
Yeah.
original pathways were sirtuins, AMP kinase, and mTOR. And now I put circadian rhythms in the pathway division. So I'm not adding to the tenets, but I'm increasing subcategories.
I love that because it's interesting, in my own work. I mean, I think I became obsessed with circadian rhythms 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I started to run it into our programs, and I like how you're saying that because as we uncover more and more and we see the interconnection of how all of these things are influenced, from the outer world to the inner world, it's kind of like, well, where do we stack it? So I appreciate how you're finding the ways to increase the subcategories. So why don't you, if you're willing, I know you've answered this many times, but it's so important, and I think our listeners are going to get a lot from this. Take us through those seven core tenets. And then, yes, if you've expanded, like adding in circadian rhythms as an example, if there has been an expansion of a subcategory that you feel is noteworthy, we'd love to hear about that.
No, yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, yeah, there are a couple of them. So I will sort of augment as we go. So tenet one is what I call DNA alterations. And originally this was telomeres, right? That's extraordinarily important in all the complex machinery, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, epigenetics, right? And at the time I go, wow, those are two pretty damn complicated things. But then recently I became obsessed with heterochromatin, right? There's euchromatin, heterochromatin, and the association of as you age, how you lose heterochromatin, therefore you lose control over your DNA, and how control of your heterochromatin is actually sort of in concert with circadian rhythms, blah, 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 blah. So I've decided that your heterochromatin falls into the category of DNA alterations, which is something entirely new, but I think as equally as important, right?
Yes.
There's an
Yes.
addition in that category. Um, Tenet two is mitochondria. And I think when I wrote the first book, I think I've had three or four issues with mitochondria, right? Low hanging fruit. It was NAD deficiency, electron transport issues, free radicals from oxygen and the oxygen radicals escaping out of your mitochondria, so failure of your NRF2 system. But since then, right? Oh my gosh. So you can throw in sirtuin 3, 4, and 5. 3 is the master regulator of your mitochondria. And again, that sort of crosses over because it's also in the sirtuin category, right?
Yeah.
But then you
Yeah.
add things in like the mitochondria permeability pore, right? The pore is it sits, it goes actually in between the matrix on the way inside and the outside of your mitochondria. And it's like a little pop-off valve. And as you're young, it flickers, right? And it sort of relieves stress in the mitochondria. And as you get older, it opens more and more and more. At a certain point, things that go in are supposed to, or things that are supposed to stay in go out, and vice versa. So when this pore opens, NAD, cytochrome C, all of these things pour out of your mitochondria, and it precipitates cellular apoptosis. So by controlling the pore, you're controlling your mitochondria, and actually, in essence, you're controlling the life and death cycle of a cell. So that's now in there. As well as the idea that, we used to count mitochondria and say, this is 100, this is a million. Now you say, well, there's one, and it's a big microorganism within a system, right? And it
Yeah.
fizzes and it fuses, and all of those things very energy dependent, right? And then you get rid of mitochondria, which is mitophagy, and you create more, which is mitochondrial biogenesis. So essentially now, per me, there are seven subcategories under mitochondrial health. So that's kind of right. I know it's a lot, but it's just but it builds, right?
It
Um,
does.
so tenet three I briefly touched on sirtuins, of which of course we know there are 7 mammalian sirtuins. The big ones associated with aging are 1, 3, and 6. And the good news is we have specific compounds that can upregulate all of those, which is extraordinarily important. And we know that they control most of all cellular homeostasis. And so when people are just starting to age, getting fat in the wrong areas, or being more inflamed than usual, or not sleeping well, it's all circadian sirtuin derived. Easy, essential thing to start with if people always ask what to start with is your sirtuins. And then, of course, the AMP kinase pathway and the mTOR pathway, which are um, sort of protagonists to each other, I would suppose. Like they measure energy and do opposite things, right? Your AMP kinase measures energy, turns things off. mTOR measures energy, turns things on, maybe not always in a good way. Then there's the whole war about rapamycin. Of course, I am anti-rapamycin only because I don't think we know what we're dealing with yet. Um,
Agreed.
and then you throw the last one, as I mentioned earlier, is the circadian system. And of course, that's tied to the sirtuins. 1 and 6 control your circadian rhythms. It's also driven by NAD, which is incredibly important. And then, of course, you have your protein complexes that run your circadian rhythms, right? You've got clock and BMAL1 that put you to sleep. You've got period and cryptochrome that wake you up. And then you've got ROR alpha and reverb that sort of change the vacillations of those systems. Anyway, that's probably a whole lot of me spitting out stuff that no one really needs to know. But essentially, those are the pathways.
The longevity revolution is about more than just searching online for a few hacks, or any one of us moving our biomarkers in the right direction. It's about coming together to learn, share, to connect, and create the unlimited future we want. That's why you need to be at RAADfest 2025 in Las Vegas from July 10th to the 13th. RAADfest, the revolution against aging and death, is proud to be partnering for the first time with Dr. Aubrey de Grey and Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation to form the single most comprehensive, advanced, informative, and inspiring event on age reversal for a general audience. Meet the people you want to make forever with. RAADfest 2025. Take advantage of lower advanced pricing now at radfest.com.
I love it. I think there's a lot of people that will enjoy understanding all that and listening to that because it is quite impactful and relevant. Where are we at though?
Okay,
You
so
got
that's
a little bit more to go.
Four.
Yep.
Tenet 4 is what I call quality control.
Yes, I love this
The
one.
idea that if your cell is a factory, things go wrong. Quality control. So when things go wrong in your DNA, you have to fix it. I love this number because it's insane. You have 10 to the fifth DNA errors per cell per day, right? 90 some percent of those are single-stranded. Abasic sites like guanosine loves to pop off or get oxidized or glycated. Or, for example, the other crazy thing, cyclobutane dimers. Sunlight melts your DNA together, creates CPDs. So that's why you get skin cancer and skin irritation, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so you have two systems, or actually you have four systems to repair your DNA. You've got the base excision, you've got nucleotide excision, and then for double-stranded errors, you've got homogeneous and non-homogeneous. And there's pros and cons to each of those. And then there's mismatch repair when you're copying something and it sort of gets screwed up. But anyway, there are 5 DNA repair mechanisms. They get downregulated as you get older. And the good news is you can upregulate them. So that's DNA. And then in terms of protein regulation, each cell can make up to 10,000 different proteins. And like in any factory, I consider them little widgets, and they're going to get screwed up. And we know that proteins work by three-dimensional structure. So the way they are specifically folded is extremely important because proteins work by, it's a three-dimensional fit into a receptor or an association with another protein, et cetera. So as soon as the configuration changes a whiff, it doesn't work. So the idea of keeping your proteins folded exactly the way you want is then falls into the category of chaperones and heat shock protein activators and all that sort of thing, and the whole family of proteostasis. And I love heat shock protein activators because I have discovered, right, everyone loves to sit in their hot tubs and their whatever and like count how many minutes and what's the temperature and blah, blah, blah. I have found fantastic medications that upregulate your heat shock proteins. So there's a way to cheat the system, and I love it.
You're all about those good hacks. I love it.
I love hacks. Not hacks, it's called repurposing of pharmaceuticals.
Yes, it's just optimizing. It's supporting the system, working with.
Yes, working with the tools we have to optimize our cells. Let's see, as I previously mentioned, autophagy is in the quality control category because it's just recycling. Let's see, that is 5. No, it's not. That's 4. 5 is your immune system that becomes your inflammasome. So this is the idea that all of your immune cells work incredibly well when you are young, and then as you get older, they don't function well. They become extremely inflammatory. And your inflammasome is monstrous, contributes to disease, cancer, blah, 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 blah. So that's very important. 6 is what I call individual cell needs. And it is the recognition that despite the fact that I pretend that all cells are the same, clearly they are not. And we want to be very cognizant of taking care of our stem cells, keeping them nice and healthy, while trying to eradicate our senescent cells. Also understanding that a cell that lives a very long time, like a brain cell or neuron, doesn't turn over. That's going to have different needs than a liver cell that lives maybe 10, 15 years, or a red cell that lives 3 months. So all of those things depend, sort of will dictate the absolute lowest required needs for any one particular cell type. So that's individual cell needs. And then the last category is what I call waste management, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to take out the trash. And this is a combination of two things mostly. One is lipofuscin accumulation. So when anything undergoes autophagy, and you're trying to take the last pieces of parts and recycle them, there's always a glob that your cell doesn't know what to do with. It can't get rid of it. It just sits there and it does what we all do, throw it in the back and ignore it, right? People that know me will know that I refer to this as the kitchen drawer phenomenon,
I
right?
love it.
Shove
Yeah.
it in a drawer in your kitchen and,
Yes.
right? There's a
Yeah.
correlation between the amount of time that you have lived in your house and the amount of crap that's in the kitchen drawer.
Yeah.
That's lipofuscin. And
Wow,
then,
that's like great.
right? I mean, we all have it, right?
It
I mean,
is. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
secret that we all try to keep, but we all have it. It's like the twisties from the bread that you'll never ever throw out for some whatever reason, right? Some pair of
Mm-hmm.
scissors that kind of doesn't work and same shit. Anyway, and then the last thing in this category is glycation. And this is a huge topic, right? So it's all the
Yes.
reducing sugars under oxidizing conditions. They glycate everything. They become AGEs, blah, 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 right? And conveniently, I have a 7-step program to defeat glycation, which I think I gave this lecture at RAADfest one year, and they got mad at me because they showed pictures of donuts and candy, along with these 7 steps as to how to, defeat it. Block carbohydrate digestion, block some of the enzymes,
Yeah.
block AGE production, increase the digestion of AGEs, clean them out of your system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so in a nutshell, that's why you age.
Are you ready to redefine aging and unlock your full potential as a longevity leader? At the Human Longevity Institute, our world-class certification programs train doctors, coaches, and wellness professionals how to deliver cutting-edge integrative longevity health solutions so people can live better today for longer, healthier, and more vibrant tomorrows. If you're ready to join the longevity revolution, visit humanlongevityinstitute.com to enroll and become a practitioner today. So as to our listeners, when you hear her say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, blah, 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 I mean, Dr. Kaufmann has been sharing this information globally for 7 years, repeatedly in interviews. And as much as I don't want to give the same conversation as you've probably heard from her in other places, it bears repeating because, and this is why, in all seriousness, I feel like it is so important, is that when we understand that the lens of longevity medicine, if we look at, okay, longevity, this field that has emerged, kind of an offshoot, really a progression from gerontology of is aging the disease? Why do we age? Do we have to? I believe that, disease is really an expression. It's almost the symptom of aging. It's not that the disease is the problem, it's what is happening, right? And you're saying, here's a framework that shows us what's happening. And so if we understand that there is a direct correlation with the rate and pace of biological aging, breakdown, dysfunction, disease in the body, you know, and all of a sudden, if we can understand why we age and how to stop it, reverse it, rejuvenate the system, we can all of a sudden, secondarily, be reducing the rate and risk of all-cause mortality and have a path to eradicating and or quite significantly diminishing the expression of chronic disease. Meaning, I believe that when we have a system like yours, and this is what we teach at the Human Longevity Institute to all of our practitioners, it's not about that we are silos and pieces and parts. It's understanding this dynamic, complex human system. And if we were to take an approach in medicine through your 7 tenets, let's use it that way. Now there is a systematic approach to understanding how to actually not only address problems as they're coming up, but be more proactive and ahead of it, to have a strategy to stay ahead of the breakdown, to optimize the pathways and the functionality. So again, instead of treatment, always treating symptoms and problems, we can have a system cleans that up, but goes way ahead to actually move into a restorative and regenerative type of approach to healing and health optimization. What do you, are you, I know you're doing some teaching with your system. I know you're teaching some practitioners as well. Is that really the approach that you're taking through your system as well, to kind of say, hey, here's a unified way that we can really, I believe you have a way that we can transform how medicine is delivered. And I don't know if that's your intention, but to me, it's a unified system that can give all different types of practitioners a way of understanding healing, health, and thriving.
Oh, 100%. So to sort of reemphasize what you said, because you said that incredibly beautifully, I have to say, I was trained in Western medicine, as you know, most of my friends are, et cetera. And the problem with Western medicine is that we wait for a disease to occur, and then we panic and we go, "Oh my God, how did this person get that?" And then we treat them, right? If you take a step backwards, you say, well, cells become dysfunctional for various reasons in the seven categories that I just talked about, right? We know that it is coming. Therefore, we can anticipate the onset of disease.
Yes.
Therefore, if you prophylax against those, you will absolutely decrease relative risk and occurrence of any age-related disease. Not all of them per se. I can't stop a kid from having a horrible brain tumor because that's not associated with,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Most age-related disease is absolutely a function of cellular dysfunction that we can see and prophylax against.
Yes.
Therefore, we don't get those diseases. The argument that people have given to me is, well, why would I want to take drugs before I have a problem? And the answer is so you don't get the problem. Right. And it all just depends on people's point of view. So, I take 60 some supplements a day and now I'm up to 12 pharmaceuticals. Right. If I must look like some old dying person if you looked at my pharmacy list. However, right, if you take smaller doses prophylactically,
Yeah.
again, you reduce relative risk of all of those things that you are going to get eventually. So,
Yeah.
yes, it is a prophylactic sort of tactic to avoid aging and disease.
So let's talk about, we're using your tenants to have a path to look at what's happening in the system, specifically at a cellular level. Um, and there's kind of, and you've talked about this a lot. We are kindred spirits on this. If we think kind of, I always like to think upstream to downstream, outer world, inner world, epigenetics, quality of the inputs is literally communicating with and impacting the expression, so to speak, of the output or how the system's responding. And so as we think upstream, downstream, outer world, inner world, there's a course. Let's talk about your approach. When you started the system, you did the research, you looked at what works, what doesn't. How do you take the upstream prophylactic? Sure, there's medications, but what can also come before that? So if we're thinking lifestyle, if we're thinking molecules, if we're thinking technologies, take us through what you've seen in your protocol. Um, how do we start to build a stack? And I know you can give us a more personalized approach if they read your book and do the calculations. But just again, kind of let's start one size fits best with just some of your best practices. Upstream, downstream, what do you see across the board are some of the biggest needle movers when we think lifestyle, molecules, technologies? What are you seeing?
So very interesting. So I design people not only supplements and drugs, but what I call longevity pyramids,
Yes.
right? So the bottom of the pyramid, and again, it's based on the fifth grade food dynamic that we all sort of had to pay attention to years ago that didn't actually make any sense. But that being said, the idea is that the building blocks on the bottom of the pyramid are things you have to do every day. And this is sort of like the heart and soul. If you can do this every day, you're going to be fine. So this is eating well, right? And the question then is, how do you define eating well? People say, I do, God knows a million different diets, right? Intermittent fasting to God knows, the paleo to this to that. I'm a vegan, but I eat pork only on Tuesdays and this and I got God no, right? Everyone has their thing, and I'm
Yes.
certainly not a dietitian, and everyone knows I eat donuts every day. So I am not going to sit here and lecture anyone on their diet, but whatever it is, that's something that you do every day, right?
Yes.
Then, of course, there's activity levels. You have to be very active. And research has demonstrated you need something for your cardiovascular system, and then you need weight training. They do very different things.
Mhm.
So people that go, oh, I run a marathon every other day. Well, good for you, but maybe there's other aspects of your system that you're missing. So you need a very well-rounded exercise program. And you don't have to hire an expensive trainer. You just need to have a balance of both systems, right?
Mhm.
So I do one day, another the other day. Great. Am I, will I ever win a bodybuilding beauty contest? No, you will, because you're amazing. But, the idea is
Thank
you
you.
just have, you're welcome. Um, you know, you just need to make sure you have a quality exercise routine, right? On top of that, then you get into the supplements, and in my world, the non-supplements, we're needing the pharmaceuticals, which some people are opposed to. I think they're wonderful because, people say clean food. Well, these are clean molecules. They came fresh
Mhm.
out of a lab. They are untouched. They are fantastic. We know what dosage you're getting. We know who made them. We know what the side effect profile is. I mean, I love molecules. Plus, I'm an anesthesiologist, so it's sort of what I do.
Yeah, that's your
And
jam.
then you add other things on top of that on a daily thing, right? I love light therapy. I
Yes.
love red infrared lights. Little plug for BioLight. They just sent me a red infrared light ultrasonic toothbrush. Oh my
Ooh,
God, I love this thing. Like, plus you can like glow in the dark and your mouth kind of lights up. It's kind of fun.
so
But
nice.
where it feels amazing. Anyway, that's a little plug for them. Um, but anyway, point being is that there are things you can do every day that just are tremendous inputs, right?
Yeah.
And then what can you do slightly less frequently? My patients love me because I tell them to get a full body massage every week, right? Increase
Love
blood
that.
flow to your muscle, increase blood flow to your skin. The touch is good, the flexibility is good. It's amazing for you. Then, what do you do every month, right? As you know, I'm a huge proponent of exosome infusions. They can give you things that you just can't get via any other mechanism. You can sit here and we can have hours discussion about which exosomes and how to give them and this and that and the other. But clearly you want some sort of perinatal, there's amniotic, there's cord, there's placental, as long as we're not chopping up small babies, I'm good with it because that would be terrible. Um, um,
I
But
love you.
anyway, I've heard that anyway, people being very creative as to where they're getting perifetal tissues. So anyway, but they fish out the stem cells, put them in some sort of medium, and then sort of milk off the exosomes. And I love exosomes over stem cells because they have fewer surface markers. There's very little DNA in them. And the idea of putting in someone else's cells with DNA in the whole bit sort of like wigs me out a little bit. But
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
but exosomes are very low risk.
Yeah.
They're affordable and you can sort of do them on a regular basis and you can inject them into your IV and they go systemically. You can put them in your skin. You can put them in anything that you want to heal faster. And they're just so potent and, have high efficacy.
I want to ask you a fast question. I know you're still building the pyramid, but specifically to the exosome infusions or, doing like the IVs or different delivery methods. So as you've been doing this, and especially some of your work with Club Exosome and bringing different patients through, what are you seeing in a more regular treatment regimen? So, if people really are following your pyramid recommendation and they are doing exosomes on a monthly basis, have you had enough time in working with these patient populations yet to notice those who are getting them more frequently versus less? Is there anything significant really standing out so far from a regenerative, biological age reversal standpoint? Tell me about your findings.
So it's really interesting. I have had probably, I want to say somewhere between 5 and 6 big dudes, like
Mhm.
big muscular dudes, right? Who have popped a bicep or tricep, something in their arm, right? And
Yeah.
that pain and the healing has just been terrible. For whatever reason, these are young guys, mid 30s, early 40s. I swear I can't tell them apart. But they all come like, right? And they're like, this hurts. And then they're terrified because I pull up my needle and they go, oh, I go, no, I promise this is going to be okay, right? And usually I'll do one injection, and then a little bit systemically as well, right? And then this guy came back to me after one. He goes, oh my God, I've never felt so good. I think after two, the pain was down to like 10%. And by the third one, it's like it never happened. And that it had been bothering him for like a year. And I hear that story over and over and over again. I had a lady at Club Exosome the last time. No, it's 2 times ago.
Hmm.
Was it? Yeah, 2 times ago. And she had had some sort of arm cancer as a kid, and they had done radiation. And so
Hmm.
now, 20 years later, muscle loss, skin wasting, like just very atrophic.
Yeah.
And it hurts. So I went up and down the arm and bilaterally gave some exosome infusion or injections. She sent me an email like 2 weeks later. Her arm had not felt that good in like years. Um, so
Hmm.
so I think for pathologies, it is absolutely reparative and regenerative.
Are
In
you, I'm sorry, I don't want to forget this question. Are you also pairing any peptides like BPC
oh,
157 or
oh,
TB 500 or anything like that?
no,
Just
because this
exosome.
is just exosome clinic. So, I mean, so when I have my private clinic, right, I put people on protocols and exosomes if they want them. But a lot
Yeah.
of people fly in either to Vegas or one of my clinic sites just for exosomes. That's all they want. Great.
Hmm.
So I am not, and it's really amazing. That therapy alone is so powerful.
Okay. And as of right now, so of course it's so powerful. I'm curious, and you may not be doing this yet, or maybe it's evolved, again, that width, is there any significant difference of let's say, and this might be hypothetical, but I'd be curious maybe on a future conversation, somebody that's had the bicep tear, something like that, that they're doing the exosomes, and then the one that's doing the exosomes with potentially BPC and TB 500, as an example. Is there any significant difference, or have you heard of it from different practitioners out there? Because I know you also train some practitioners. Just curious on that.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. I do not do a ton of peptides because I believe that they are second tier in the longevity world.
Okay.
I think that if you optimize your cells, they're going to make exactly what you need without having to augment it.
So, and optimizing cells, what you're finding is one of the most efficient ways is going to be through exosomes.
Well, no, I mean, well, it's a tier system.
Yeah.
Right?
So first
So,
let's do everything that we have
so
to do every day, and then we're going to the once a week and to the once a month. So yes, we're still on that journey. I apologize. I took us
no, no,
off
no, that's
course.
fine. That's fine. And somewhere between month to 6 months, right, falls the peptides. And I
Yeah.
consider those like it's like coloring in the spots that nothing else hits,
Hmm.
right? Because usually between the drugs and the supplements, you can optimize pretty much anything, right? So for example, if I get some 40-year-old dude whose testosterone is low and I optimize his cells, it pops right up to normal because I've made the cell do what it's going to do. Great.
Hmm.
Right. But if a 70-year-old guy comes in, I put him on a protocol, I can budget, but I can't return his testosterone levels to normal. So, right. So maybe we go into some sort of augmentation for that, or some sort of augmentation for growth hormone, or for muscle, or for this, or any of the sort of peptides. But I consider them secondary to the optimization system. I don't start there. It's just an add-on system. But I think exosomes are far more powerful than peptides.
And absolutely, because of obviously their regenerative nature, and peptides are going to be just as there is. Exosomes are also signaling, well, the stem cell signals, and then the exosome starts to really to do the work, so to speak, right? And the peptides are signalers for our listeners. So they're just going to help to increase what naturally would be going on. So I agree. I like them as more of an optimization standpoint, but I'm curious, just again, kind of off script, but you're bringing something up. Let's talk for a moment about some really chronic cases. So there is a part of what's so fun in longevity medicine is we get to go into all this rejuvenation, regeneration, optimization. And yet 3 out of 4 people are still stuck in very real right now dysfunction, chronicity to some degree, and real health complications. So what about people that come in severe autoimmune, or they've got massive mold lines, SIRS, something like that? Like they're really chronic. They've been dealing with some bad stuff for a long time that they just really haven't been able to get much correction on. Have you had that patient population come into your longevity pyramid, and you've been able to modulate and restore function for them relatively quickly, or what's your experience been with that, if at all?
That you're going to hate my answer, and the answer is no. No. So I really leave that up to the functional medicine docs, to be honest with you. I am not a primary care physician. I have no interest in, trying to fix someone with significant Lyme's or this, that, and the other. That's not, well, I do have two patients with Lyme's, and exosomes does seem to be helping. That being said,
Yes.
but I do not like chronic disease. That is not my thing. So generally speaking, I will send someone to a primary care person first and or a cardiologist if they have significant heart issues, get them optimized, and then I will take care of them.
Yeah.
I am not going to, I just don't have a clinic or the interest in seeing people on a regular primary care like-esque basis and trying to figure out some very complex, detailed problem.
Right.
People like you are really good at that. That's not me.
It's tough. It's a tough thing, but knowing that, so when I zoom out, I look at, instead of getting in minutia, I still think about the actual cellular biology and the real science in your tenets, right? So if I look at your seven tenets as a framework for patient care, that's why I was kind of asking, because it is in there. The roadmap is in there of how docs can really build a foundational pathway up to optimization using longevity medicine. But I also respect what you're saying. So this was more a personal conversation. I'm curious what's just some of the approaches, because I know you've worked with so many different people out there. And I think it's, again, whether it's the layperson or the practitioner that's listening to us right now, I know there are so many people out there seeking and searching. And I think one of the questions becomes, okay, wait, when do I dive into longevity medicine? And if longevity medicine and regenerative medicine really holds the potential to be the medicine of the future, so to speak, what happens if I am sick? So, like, how are you seeing this role of longevity medicine and where it fits in the overall arc of just really transforming healthcare as we know it and creating, just greater expressions of health and thriving across the masses?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And unfortunately, as you know, as a physician, um, if you take a reasonably normal person, right? No real health problems, no real family history of health problems, they're going to do reasonably well. But you can
Yeah,
take that reasonable person and you can extend their life and their health span 20, 30 years using longevity medicine,
yeah,
right? But there's the population of people that are just not doing well from day one, chronically ill patients.
yeah,
And the problem is that their cellular biology is just different, be it some, subunit change in their mitochondria, where they've got mitochondrial failure leading to this, leading to that, leading to the other. And the problem is that their cellular physiology can be extraordinarily different from other people's. And so
hmm,
I don't think I mean, the idea is the same. Let's optimize their mitochondria. But the system isn't going to be the same, because if I can optimize things and theoretically make it worse. So, right? So if you take someone with severe autoimmune deficiency and you give them exosomes, you make them worse.
yeah.
Right? I mean, so some diseases are helpful or helped by longevity and some are not. Right? So this isn't the end
Yes.
all cure all, but it is a fantastic tool for most people, but not all people.
And I think that this warrants a moment, a call out moment for our listeners, is that when you heard Dr. Kaufmann just say, somebody's got autoimmune, exosomes can make it worse. The reality is, if you are somebody that's on any type of immunosuppressant, you've been doing things to dampen the immune response. So it's not an overactive response. And then you bring in molecules, be they exosomes, a lot of people are doing a lot with peptides, that all of a sudden help to signal and work with an immune response. All of a sudden, it can wake things up and it can exacerbate. It can become more pronounced. And all of a sudden, you could feel a lot worse before you would feel a lot better. And so, this is why, of course, Dr. Kaufman, myself, Human Longevity Institute, there's multiple groups out there that are training practitioners to understand the nuances in patient care, because it's exciting to hear this stuff. I think on the one hand, we are at such a beautiful time, further along than we've ever been in medicine, and just really what can happen as we are using these principles. So I even think about your tenet with circadian rhythms. Just understanding 24-hour light dark cycles and signaling from, all of a sudden, what type of signals are we getting into the brain and into the cells and the clocks in the cells from those light cues? And what does that mean to metabolic function, to mitochondrial function? It matters, right? And so meaning it's all out there. It's in the sciences. And I think we're over the next decade, we're going to really see a refinement in conventional healthcare, moving into a more integrative, and again, if we dare say, a longevity type of approach, because the end game is we can curate greater states of health. Aging is optional. We don't have to just be in a chronic state of dysfunction and disease. And to your point, we have pharmacologics, we have technologies, we have exosomes, we have a lot at our disposal which can help us truly live a whole lot longer, a whole lot better. And so I just want to thank you for being one of the trailblazers out there. We have a lot more to go, but every day we're in patient care, we learn more. We know better, we do better. But I am curious. We've got a few minutes left, Dr. Kaufmann, and I know you talk to a lot of people. You see a lot of things out there. What would you say are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions about longevity, as we're kind of sitting here right now, kind of going, well, maybe it isn't for everybody. So, what are some of those myths or misconceptions about longevity that you are frequently encountering from, again, feedback from people buying your book or out in the field, and how do you address them?
That is a huge question. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
You know,
we should have started with that.
started there. No, it's really interesting. So, for example, right, I am right now in a normal hospital with normal people, and I was talking to one of the secretaries in the lunch line, and she was whining about something that had to do with aging, and I looked at her and I go, I said, when you want to stop aging, you just let me know, and I'll help take care of you. And she looked at me like my head was spinning around from The Exorcist, right?
Yeah.
So one of the misconceptions is that it's all crackpot science and that we don't know what we're talking about and it's nuts, right? And then the other thing that I hear all the time is that people don't differentiate between lifespan and health span.
Yeah.
And the idea of longevity medicine, they think that they're going to be old and demented and sitting in a wheelchair with trach, at 120. And that's longevity, but that's shitty longevity. Like we want to instill the idea of health span, doing what you want, being physically active, mentally capable, as long as is possible. That's the idea. And I think people don't get that necessarily. The once you've, gotten into People Unlimited and RAADfest, clearly those people already know these principles. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that they are huge proponents of spreading that information around. But I still run into that every day, and it's incredibly frustrating. Um, or it's really funny. I'll be sitting on an airplane because I fly all the time, like, working on some chapter or a presentation or something. And
Yes.
inevitably, what are you doing? I'm a longevity physician. And people like they either get really excited or terrified. It's really funny.
And I think that's a great place for any of us to start, right? What does it elicit within us when all of a sudden we think like, okay, wait a minute, like this is really interesting science, but do I actually believe it's possible? Sandy, I've heard you say that your number is 120. Obviously, Asprey's out there saying, hey, 180. Aubrey de Grey years ago was saying the first person to live to 150 is definitely already born. And of course, if we talk to Jim Stroll, here within the RAD community, he's an immortalist. And he's like, if that's all that we're doing, like we've got a whole lot more that we can do even beyond that. And I think step one is being willing to turn the mirror on ourselves and lovingly get curious about our own beliefs. Where do we limit potentially our own potential? Sometimes it's easier to think that it's not possible than maybe getting curious about, well, gosh, what does become possible? So, where do you think, with the science you're seeing, the work that you're doing, where do you think we're at right now in kind of extending health span and lifespan? Like, do you think we're going to see many more people easily making it to 120? How close are we to Asprey at 180? Do you think in our lifetime we're going to even be able to go well beyond it because we are going to hit longevity escape velocity? What's your opinion on it?
So good question. So you have to think about what we know and how old the people are that are trying,
Yeah.
right? So as an example, if I knew, so I didn't know anything about anti-aging or longevity until I was 45, when like some thought entered my head that said, maybe I can figure this out, right? But I was already 45 years old. So now I'm 56. I'm thinking that had I started a decade ago, like actually full-blown longevity, maybe 130, 140, right? But so if you think about it, let's say I started full-blown at 50-ish,
Yeah.
right? And let's say a normal person would die in their 80s, roughly on average, right? So let's say I took that 35 extra years and maybe I doubled it a bit,
Mhm.
right? That puts me in the 110, 120 category. So for me, I think that's a reasonable amount of time, right?
Mhm.
My children, however, my 18-year-old is on a longevity protocol,
Yeah.
right? Her possibilities are going to be amazing. Considering what she's already doing, what has yet to be discovered, we're getting closer and closer and closer. Um, and I don't think, people talk about the escape velocity as sort of being a linear, thing. It's not. It's parabolic. You
Yeah.
make huge strides, and then every year I think they're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller as we dig into the absolute minutia. So I think it's going to not be as fast as, oh, say, Peter Diamandis wants it to be, but we will get there. In our lifetimes, no. In my daughter's lifetime, maybe, right? Three
Mm.
generations from now, absolutely.
I love it. And so, as we get ready to wrap up today, beyond the science, because you have done so much to solidify a framework of validated science that can help to get there, and future generations to have a roadmap to get there. But what are some of your personal, what's your personal philosophy or practice that you believe is really essential for making a longer life, not just possible, but profoundly fulfilling?
So that's an excellent question. So I think that's actually two questions. So question one is, what do I do personally? And I live by this general rule, which is live for today, but plan for tomorrow.
Mm,
Right? So living for today, you try to experience everything you possibly can, and you try everything new that you can, and you go on life adventures, right? And you put yourself out there. And I take so many damn drugs that I shouldn't take, and I have overdosed and tried to kill myself by accident a few times. Don't tell my kids. Um, you know, I have gone out there trying to find things that would be helpful. I mean, the joke is I'm going to die trying to live forever, right? Because that's what we do,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you have to live today, right? At the same time, you have to plan for tomorrow. Let's assume we
Mm,
do make it to 120. I'm telling you that retirement at 65 is not looking good.
yeah.
You have to plan. Yeah, maybe I don't know. Like there's so many things that you would do. You can't live the life that your parents did because it's just not
Yes.
go that way. You can't really retire. You can't do all of these things because you have to assume that you're going to be in your mid 40s and 50s for, 30, 40 years. But on the
Mm,
other hand, right, as we have that much experience in our careers, our wisdom increases and our physical ability to do things stays the same. I think people's productivity in their 50s and 60s is just going to skyrocket,
yes.
right? And what's interesting is people that I know are retiring at my age, right? And I'm like, how could you possibly do that? Like, life is too much fun. Let's explore and invent and discover and write books and do this and do that. So I think it's sort of like, there's this whole framework of don't get obsessed by living forever because you have to enjoy it today.
Yes.
But
Yes. Oh,
oh, know that there's like, right, today and tomorrow. Like, so it's sort of a continuum.
oh, I love that. And the way you just did that today and tomorrow. So there's also this expansion contraction, meaning it's breath. It is the breath of life. It is and also, not either or. And I just love the way you have wrapped that up for us. It is, yeah, live today, plan for tomorrow. It is a well, not I that's so profound. So whew, it feels good. It feels good. Let us all find what fulfills us to just want to remember. Let's just live today and plan for tomorrow and live more fully today so we have more tomorrows. Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, where do you want to have of course, it'll be in the show notes. Tell us where to find out all the things about the amazing, incredible, impeccable you. Where do we want to go?
Good
Kaufmann
question.
Protocol, drsandrakaufmann.com. Where do we go?
Yeah, so it's actually kaufmannprotocol.com. And every time my college kid goes on break, the website gets souped up. So I can tell you she's on break right now. So the good news is there's all sorts of really cool stuff on there now. There's a consult service on there. There's now an app on there that I wrote, but it was a real app and then it got issues with the subscription service. So now it's a one-time, press the button. It'll tell you exactly what to take every day. So that's kind of cool. She put that on there. She built me merch, like, merch. So if you want to be wearing Kaufmann Protocol t-shirts, happy to get you one.
Heck yeah.
All sorts of fun stuff. And new
Love.
books are coming, lectures are coming, and all sorts of new stuff is coming down the pike.
We didn't even get to scratch the tip of the surface of the iceberg, you all. There's so much that Dr. Sandra Kaufmann's up to. You will continue to see more, hear more as she is out there leading the way. More books to come, more international reach, more education, more real world, amazing. Just as you can tell in this conversation today, she practices what she preaches. She's not afraid to go out and try it. She's not afraid to live it. And today I hope you leave this episode not being afraid either. Go live, go tap into your aliveness. So as always, go be bold, stay curious, and truly say yes to experience more aliveness today. Thank you for joining us on RAADcast, where science and soul ignite the future of radical life extension. Be sure to visit us over at raadfest.com. There you can engage with like minds in the super longevity movement and find out about upcoming conferences and events. If you're inspired by today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to live bigger, bolder, and longer. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time on RAADcast.